And welcome back to an episode of the Cool Your Jets podcast. Here is Ben Blessington and Michael Nania. Look at us, Michael, doing an in-week podcast. A lot going on with the Jets. We asked for your mailbag questions, and you guys gave us a ton of great ones. But Michael, I have one for you. Obviously, the big news that came out today, Wednesday, which is when we're recording it, is that Robert Saleh, in addition to, I think it's up to like 18 other Jets have tested positive for COVID. And there's a chance that Saleh won't be coaching this Sunday. There's a lot of players that are going to be out. Does this change whether or not you're cheering for them to win, for the culture and for, just the momentum and whatnot versus to lose and get the higher draft pick, yet have to suffer, I guess, the embarrassment of picking, maybe top three or even top two or hell, even number one once again?
Yeah, it is a really interesting dilemma. And for me, for pretty much the whole season up to this point, pretty, I've been cheering for wins, and I haven't really changed that stance at all. Even once they were, clearly going down the drain after the Bengals game, and then once they were officially eliminated from the playoffs, I've been pretty adamant that I feel like wins are important for this team and they can be valuable going forward. But they definitely are. Now it's definitely a little bit more uh, difficult for me to decide how to approach it. I think I'm definitely not going to actively root for losses like I may have been at a point, not may, but definitely was at points last
If you
season.
listen to this podcast at all last fall, I mean, we were literally like screaming with joy after. Did we play your reaction to the Jets Raiders
Yep.
gaff? Yeah,
Yep.
we were actively
Um,
cheering against
so
them
I was
last
I was
year.
just giving the business like answer. I may or may not have been cheering for them last year. But yeah, I'm not going to actively root against them this year because they have their quarterback. There isn't necessarily that one guy in this class that you have to get. Um, and again, I still think wins can be important for this team. And losing to the Jaguars at home on a game that may be in sort of a primetime spotlight if it gets moved is not going to be fun. But at the same time, with all these players out due to COVID, including a lot of key young players and the rookie head coach who you want to be a part of these wins, and the Jets now being very close to getting a guy like Thibodeau, like Aiden Hutchinson, who can really help them a lot in this defense, it is sort of getting enticing. And obviously, with it being the Jaguars, it's a game that's going to determine a lot in terms of the draft order. So I think I'm more so at the point now where I'm just going to kind of watch the game and whatever happens, happens. I'm not going to root for them to lose, but I'm also it's kind of at the point where it's hard for me to actively root for wins as well because the draft race is enticing, but it's at the end of the day, it's just mainly about Zach Wilson's development and the development of the other young players across the roster. I think ideally you win led by those guys playing well, which it's hard not to win led by them because most of this team is made up of young players even if they're not young players, players who do have a chance or will be here going forward. So I think that's more so how I'm going to approach it. I'm just at the point where I'm not rooting for losses, not necessarily rooting for wins, just kind of going to sit back, watch what happens, and evaluate it all.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to take in there. I think one of the things you touched on is in the scenario where the game gets moved just because of the amount of positives, and we'll see. I mean, obviously that happened this past week. If the Jets were to be playing on Monday or Tuesday or something, and then they're in more of a prime time spotlight, I'll definitely be cheering for the win. Just because I don't know. I don't know if we want to go through the embarrassment of losing to Trevor Lawrence and losing to the dumpster fire that is Jacksonville on primetime television. I think the worst case scenario, maybe not the worst case scenario, but the scenario that I'm least hoping for is the Jets win an ugly game where Zach Wilson doesn't play well. I think that is to me is like you don't really get much out of it, especially if Saleh's not coaching. It's just kind of like, all right, that just knocked us down in the draft position. If you can argue this is the best case scenario, is that Zach plays lights out, but the Jets can't stop the run and they lose the game. That's a good scenario as well. If the Jets play lights out and they win, you have to be kind of happy with that because at a certain point, I mean, how many times do you keep picking in the top three um, and looking at that as progress? I mean, the Jets, at a certain point, you have to rise up from the basement. And clearly that's not this year, but hey, if they beat Jacksonville and then they played competitive games against the Bucks and Bills, that puts a different spin on their season than if they lose to Jacksonville and get walloped by Tampa Bay and Buffalo. So it's just it's a double-edged sword, I guess. I will say though, 2019 I think is a good example where I think a lot of people were initially, when they're at the bye or whatever, cheering for the Jets to bottom out. The Jets kind of go on a run and they win some games toward the end of the season. And, obviously the Jets kept pointing to, we had the 6-2 finish. And obviously when you look deeper, you could see the flaws in that 6-2 finish. But yeah, the Jets went 7-9, and then the next year they were an absolute dumpster fire and probably should have been picking first overall. So those late season wins don't necessarily translate to next year's success. Obviously, you saw with the 49ers, they picked top three, got Bosa, and you saw what that did for that defense. And the next year they're in the Super Bowl. So it can happen. I think the number one thing for me is Zach Wilson's development. And like you said, the other young guys playing well. If you keep losing, I think the pressure for Joe Douglas goes up, and I guess the way this season is spun, the narrative around this team is a lot lower. So you have to deal with that, and it's embarrassing. But like you said, if you can get the opportunity to get a guy like Kayvon or Aiden Hutchinson, obviously I like Karlaftis as well, another edge prospect. This defense is going to live and die by its defensive line. You get Carl Lawson back. If you get an elite edge prospect, you can bump JFM inside next to Quinn, and now you have an elite defensive line, and that you'll see a big difference with the defense. So there's a lot to take in there. I guess, Michael, your thoughts on Ron Middleton. I watched his press conference today. I got good vibes from him. I think that's the other thing is like, you kind of want, if it is Ron Middleton out there, for his sake, I kind of hope they win. It's tough. I got good vibes from him. I liked him, and I think it's cool that he's getting this opportunity. But again, it's like, then you think about the long-term needs and how the Jets have cost themselves high draft picks in the past. I don't know. It's a lot to take. I think I'm bummed that yet again we're in this situation for the fifth year in a row or something.
Yeah, I liked Ron Middleton. I could absolutely get the vibe of a guy who just like an hour ago, before he started those interviews, learned he was going to be the head coach of a team. So you could sort of feel the kind of bewilderment that he's probably going through. But he seems like he's a good coach, has a good feel for the locker room, and is a guy who they'll rally around and play well for this week. I'm not ready for them to beat the Jaguars and hear the takes of, oh, Jets win without Robert Saleh. What does that mean? That's going to be not so
That's
fun.
True.
But obviously that's completely ridiculous. But yeah, this is a really interesting situation. I think the best way to approach it this week is to just sit back and watch it, cheer when players do something well. And ultimately, if they lose, it's not that you want them to lose, but if they do, you can be like, okay, there's a silver lining to this. There's a light at the end of the tunnel to this. And you pointed out Nick Bosa. I think that's the clearest, the most positive example you can look at as to why them losing and rising the draft can be beneficial right now. Because think about if the Niners didn't get Nick Bosa, would that defense even be good enough for the Niners to get to the Super Bowl, for Robert Saleh to get on the head coaching map? Would he even be the Jets head coach right now?
It's crazy.
So that pick really worked out for them. And obviously the season before that, when they traded for Garoppolo in 2018, or 2017, when they traded for Garoppolo, they finished that season great. They go into 2018 with high hopes. He gets injured, and that momentum doesn't carry over. Then 2018, they bottom out, get the second pick, beating out the Jets, who fell to number 3 and got Quinn Williams, who's been very good, but is probably not Nick Bosa's level. And then Bosa is the engine of that team getting to the Super Bowl. And it's now that Robert Saleh is here, same exact team, same exact coach and defensive scheme, or at least philosophy. It's a similar situation. The Jets really need winners up front, guys who can win battles and make this pass rush elite, because we've seen this season, this hasn't been a terrible pass rush. It's probably been okay, but if it's got to be a great pass rush for the defense to work, because they're not going to blitz that much to help them out. And these defensive linemen are flying up the field. It's tough to defend the run. You got to be great rushing the passer. And they haven't been close to great this year, but you get Carl Lawson back. You, like you said, push Franklin Myers inside, get one of these top 2 elite edge guys. And now you have, say Thibodeau, Lawson, Franklin Myers, Quinnen, with Bryce Huff still there as another guy, another piece of the puzzle. That's a fantastic pass rush, and that is how you can start to get this defense back on the right track. So it can be a very beneficial thing. As ugly as it may be in the present, it can be beneficial. But you just hope that if they do continue to lose and move up the draft, it happens in a way where there's still positives to take away with the way that they're losing these games. Sort of like how 2018 the Jets were losing, but Darnold was playing great. If you can get the same thing with Zach Wilson right now, which I think you did to an extent in this Miami game, get quite a bit of progress from him, even in a loss.
I don't know
That
about
was,
great.
I wouldn't say great, but I think it was a positive. I think there was more good than bad, but you would like to see more than that. But
Great.
it's an interesting dilemma for sure.
All right, let's get to the mailbag. I'm sure some of these topics are gonna work their way into these questions. First one from Doggy Boy 4. I keep seeing people mock the Jets to receiver a corner in the first round. Am I crazy in thinking A, this will never happen, and B, it shouldn't happen? With the other holes in the roster and wide receiver and corner do not need to be addressed until at the highest second round. I mean, I get the argument. I mean, both those. There are mock drafts out there where you'll see the Jets taking a corner and Derek Stingley with their first round pick, and then taking a receiver, whoever it might be, with that Seahawks first round pick. I don't think that will happen. I think corner is less likely. I know Stingley's been a popular guy to mock to the Jets because on paper, if you don't watch this team, you look at the Jets corners, you think they got a bunch of no names. Hey, Stingley's supposed to be a top 5 pick. Let's mock him to the Jets. But just Robert Sala's scheme doesn't really value corners the same way that, a guy like Rex Ryan would have. Like you just mentioned, the assets are going to go to the defensive line, and the DBs are going to be they're not going to have as much pressure on them because you're going to be rushing for and playing everybody back in coverage. That doesn't mean you want bad corners. Certainly you want great cornerback play, but is it smart to burn A+ asset on a position that probably isn't in the top 5 most positions of your team when you're trying to build it? So I don't think the Jets go corner. With receiver, however, if they fall in love with the prospect, and look, it's a great receiver draft class, you will see where that Seahawks pick ends up. It'll be around 10th. Right now it's at 8. Maybe they win a game or two, but bumps it back a little bit. But it'll be way higher than we thought it would be. I mean, when the trade happened, a lot of people thought that the 2 first-round picks were going to be, post 25. We're going to be late first-round picks. The fact that the Jets are getting a very high first-round draft pick in comparison is great news. I could see them taking a receiver there. I wouldn't be completely shocked by it. I think, and I said this on Monday's podcast, that I think the Jets are going to do everything in their power to build an elite receiver room for Zach Wilson, do everything that they can to surround him with as much talent as possible. Clearly, Joe Douglas saw that the cheap route didn't work with Sam Darnold. He's going to go all in. He's got Elijah Moore. He's paid Corey Davis. I think they try to move Davis into the slot. And then you go out and you try to sign a Devontae Adams. I know Chris Godwin just tore his ACL. You try to sign an elite guy like that. Maybe you look at the trade market for an elite number 1. If those 2 things fall through, I would not be surprised if they took a receiver at number 8. And I wouldn't hate it. I wouldn't hate if there's an elite receiving prospect that they see there. I mean, you look at, I know CeeDee Lamb fell a little bit in the draft, but there are first-round receivers that have gone and played really well. So, Michael, what do you think about that versus, what do you think about the Jets taking a receiver or a corner or both in the first round?
Yeah, I think the Jets are in a position where they can really lean towards the prospects that they like, regardless of position, because I think at their core, with Joe Douglas's philosophies, with the way that both of these schemes are built, both offensively and defensively, they are a front to back sort of team, O-line first and D-line first. But with the assets that they've invested, they've already sort of built up both of those units to an extent. Obviously, they've Quinnen, they invested in Franklin Myers, invested in Lawson, and presumably, well, not presumably, but they potentially could take an edge rusher with their first round picks. Then offensively, obviously already have 2 first rounders there. Fant will probably be returning. LDT might be returning. McGovern might be returning, or they'll invest in someone else on that interior. So there are already a lot of money in draft capital invested in those 2 units. So obviously they can continue to do that, but now they have the opportunity to focus on some of these other spots a little bit more, even though they're not as premium. They they could still go after a corner if they really love him, or a receiver, or if they really love someone at that position. So I think, like I said, in a vacuum, O line and D line first, I think are more important for Joe Douglas and these two schemes that they run. But they do have the opportunity now to focus on the back end a little bit and the outside offensively. So I could absolutely see them targeting those two positions high in the draft, just because I think by the time we get there, they might feel, especially if they do move up with their own first round pick, and they can get Hutchinson or Thibodeau. I think that by the time that Seahawks pick rolls around, they could be really stacked on the O line and D line. So they could have a little more flexibility to make the splashier pick and go for a defensive back or a receiver.
Right. If a guy like Stingley fell to their second first round pick, I think that is the big difference, is that the Jets have two, and the corner you're seeing is more considered with the first round pick, and the receiver is more considered with the second. I don't see the Jets taking Stingley with that first pick unless they went out and they end up at, pick 6 or something, and whatever it is. But as it stands, I just don't see them using a top 5 pick in a corner. And you have to remember, we do this every single year. When we look at the draft as fans, we look at the holes in the team, and then we kind of just do the draft or the mock drafts based off trying to fill the holes. But that is just not how they do it.
Right.
They have obviously their board, and they're going to draft the best player, not necessarily the best player available, but the best player for the New York Jets. So who's the best player? What positions do we value? And then you can take into account need. I think Elijah Moore is a great example, because when he was first drafted, not all Jets fans were thrilled with the pick, because a lot of them thought, well, we don't need a receiver. We got Corey Davis, we got Denzel Mims, Jameson Crowder, we signed Keelan Cole. Hell, we got a lot more needs in this team. Why are we taking a receiver? That was the initial reaction by a lot of people. But you see what happens when you take the best player on your board, a guy who's fallen, a guy at a premium position, and then you see, hey, turns out we actually did not have a great receiver room. Now you have a blue chip prospect in your team moving forward. So the Jets do not, as it stands, value corner. If they love him and they feel like the value they're getting him is great, they might take him. But just because the Jets might have an apparent need there, I just think that need is more likely to be filled in either free agency or day 2 of the draft. I just don't see them using that top pick on a corner. I think it's more likely, and I guess we're going to touch on this a little later, as a lot of these mailbag questions have shifted more towards the draft, I guess, that it's more likely that they would take Kyle Hamilton as opposed to Derek Stingley. And you would say, what cornerback is a more valuable position than safety in a vacuum? But in this defense, I don't believe that to be the case. And especially when Hamilton, and look, I have the Jamal Adams PTSD. I don't know if they would take Hamilton, but Hamilton could have a Micah Parsons type impact in this defense from year one. He's exactly the type of player they would need. And safety, you saw the 49ers invested in that safety position much more than they invested in corner. So I don't see that. Receiver, though, I mean, you think about if the Jets were to take, let's just say Garrett Wilson. Let's say that the picks stand as they do, and the Jets take Garrett Wilson, and you have a receiver room for Zach Wilson that is Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, Corey Davis. Maybe you bring back Jameson Crowder and Braxton Berrios, whatever it is. That is an elite receiving room. And when was the last time you could even say that the Jets had a young, core of weapons like that? I mean, I don't remember the last time. I guess Marshall and Decker, but those guys were aging veterans. To win in the NFL today, you need a lot of firepower. And so I wouldn't rule out a receiver, especially since this does seem to be a great class. But last thing on this, I have seen plenty of receiver talent go on day 2 of the draft and proven to be, like Elijah Moore, and proven to be great. So if they think it's a deep class and they like somebody else more, I can see that as well. But I wouldn't rule out receiver. Corner, I think, is much more unlikely. We'll probably end up touching more on that in a little bit, but let's move ahead. Talking more, I guess, about this year and last year's draft class. At Only Jets 1 says, how do you feel about the AVT trade up after a year? He says, I hate it, and I think we could have used those 2 third-round picks to fill out our roster in important places. We could have used those picks to move back up into the second round and maybe caught Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah or Asante Samuel Jr. Lots of holes could have been filled. I disagree with that. I think at the time of this isn't even like bias or revisionist history. At the time, we were all in favor of an AVT trade up, and I stick by it. I think AVT has been arguably the Jets' best rookie. There's a case to be made for Michael Carter. Obviously, Elijah Moore has come on as well. I mean, it's been a hell of a draft class, but AVT has been a stud. He's only going to get better. You saw what he's done for this offensive line. Last year, I think they had one of the worst offensive lines. Obviously, Sunday was not a good performance, but they were banged up. Last year, they had one of the worst offensive lines, and this year, I think they've been, average, below average, but they've been pretty solid. And AVT has been responsible for a lot of big runs, and he's been solid in pass protection. I think he's a blue chip prospect. And I think the other thing is the Jets have so many draft assets that not all those guys are going to make the team. They traded 2 third-round picks. They have, 2 seconds and 2 firsts this year. Obviously, there are holes, but I think sometimes you have to sacrifice that to get a blue chip prospect at a huge position of need. Because if the Jets didn't get AVT, your starting guards, because LDT was on the team, your starting guards would have been Alex Lewis and Greg Van Roten. You probably would have drafted a guard at some point in the second or third. But then Greg Van Roten retires, and that third-round guard is now starting. I like the move up for AVT. But what are your thoughts on him in his rookie season, Michael?
Yeah, I agree. I think this trade has worked out really well. I think the reason that you do a trade up move is obviously you're sacrificing value. Usually the team trading up or pretty much always the team trading up is losing points on the draft trade chart because that's a sacrifice. You get the best asset in the deal, but you're giving up more assets or better assets cumulatively to the team you're trading up. And the reason you do that is because you feel very confident that the guy you're trading up to get is going to be good and that his chance of panning out makes it worth giving up multiple picks to get him. And that's based on your conviction, based on how you scouted that guy and how you think he fits in your scheme. And so far for Vera Tucker, it's working out. He's been really good. And I think his pass protection is a work in progress. He's been up and down, but the run blocking has been fantastic. And just the eye test and the way he fits in the scheme, it's all been there. He's been durable, and he looks like has a very high chance to be a great player for this team for a long time. And you can go into next season with another offensive line spot already figured out. And I think the problem with the logic of, we could have stayed back there, we could have taken Darisaw, we could have gotten Owusu Koromoa and all these guys, is that it's not as simple as you would have just sat there and taken the best player who went in that range. There's no guarantee the Jets would have taken the few hits that got selected in that range. Who's to say you wouldn't take one of the, for every Owusu Koromoa in that second round, there's 10 guys who you've never even heard of.
Jabari Zuniga and Ashton Davis.
Yeah, exactly. So there's no guarantee that those picks are going to work out. That, obviously in a perfect world, would it probably be better if you could, like the question says, get Owusu Koromoa, Asante Samuel Jr., Darisaw. Sure, that's probably better, but that's not what they would have ended up with. They would have taken different players who most likely would not add up to be as valuable as AVT has been for them. And that's the point of a trade up. You feel like you can maximize your odds with one player because you're so confident in that guy and how he fits with what you're trying to do. And that's exactly what we've seen with AVT. So trade ups are risky. If they don't work out, they're huge losses, but if they do work out, they can be huge wins. It's a high risk, high reward sort of move. And I think with AVT, it's worked out. It was a big position of need. They wanted to support their rookie quarterback. And I think that getting AVT has been a big part of Zach Wilson getting fairly decent support this year. I wouldn't say great support, but he's definitely gotten better support than I think Sam Darnold did his rookie year. And I think a lot of rookie quarterbacks get. I think he's gotten better support than Trevor Lawrence. So, and AVT is a big part of that. So it's a high risk thing. And I get the argument of the draft trade points and they have so many holes. You could have filled different holes, but when you do a trade up and it works out, I think you happily take that and realize that sure, if you stay there, you have more picks, you hit them all. Yeah, that's probably better, but that's not the point of trading up. The point is so you can get the highest percentage pick in the deal in hopes that it works out. And so far, it looks like it has for the Jets.
I think one of the big things from this class that makes me feel so confident in it, and part of the reason you've seen so much success, is it seems like every pick, and you can't really speak to the day 3 picks. It seemed this way with Michael Carter II as well. But at least from Zach to AVT to Elijah Moore to Michael Carter, the first 4 picks, it seemed like the Jets were in love with those prospects and ecstatic that they fell to them. Because, I mean, outside of Zach Wilson, they all kind of, AVT went in his range, but Elijah Moore and Michael Carter were not supposed to be there. These were all picks that Joe Douglas and the scouting staff loved, and they were able to land them, through either luck or, in AVT's case, I guess the skill of trading up and only giving away 2/3. That's the key to having a good draft. When you get in the position where the guys you want to take ahead of you, and you're timid, you don't trade up, the guys you want get taken ahead of you, and then you're stuck taking a guy you're not necessarily in love with. That's how you end up with not great draft classes. There are times where you love a player and your scouting staff just isn't very good, and you're not a very good GM and they're a bad player. But with this scouting staff, I'm pretty confident in them, based off a lot of what we've seen from this draft class. I really think they nailed this draft class out of the park, and I don't think they could have done much better. Like you said, it's easy to play revisionist history, but I think AVT is a player that they loved at a very important position. They want to dominate the trenches, as we just talked about in the last question. They want to be good up front on the defensive side of the ball and the offensive side of the ball. Douglas is a former offensive lineman. He wants to have one of the best O-lines in the league. And the O-line that he inherited was probably the worst O-line in the league. And you see the Jets still have to do work on the O-line. I mean, after all the resources they put into it, they still have work to do, and they could maybe use a first-round pick on another offensive lineman. So this is a spot that the Jets want to be great at, and AVT was a big reason why. And one more thing on this, we didn't even get to really see him next to Mekhi Becton, which was part of the reason we were very excited about this trade up, was you got to have Becton next to AVT protecting Zach's blind side, and you got those running lanes for days. That was going to open up the Jets running game a lot. I'm very excited to see that next year when you get to have Becton and AVT next to each other blocking for Michael Carter. I think that's going to lead to some big 15-yard runs, and hopefully more. All right, from at Rod C _ Costa. What can we do about the media circus around the Jets lately? Lately, there's been a media circus around the Jets for the entirety of their existence, probably since Namath. I think there's nothing you can do about it. Obviously, Zach gets more scrutinized than other rookie quarterbacks. But the flip side, as Michael and I were talking about this question beforehand, the flip side of that is that when they're good, they get talked about a ton. So you get to enjoy the spotlight when it's on you for being great, but you have to deal with it when the spotlight's on you for being a dumpster fire. I don't think the Jets are as bad as a lot of other teams in the league, but because they're in the league's biggest market, they're going to be portrayed as the worst team in the league. But it is what it is. Michael, what are your thoughts on the circus around the Jets?
Yeah, I don't know. With a lot of the stuff that's been going around recently, there's been apparently a lot of Zach Wilson criticism and negativity around him, which obviously a lot of it is warranted, but it feels like it's been higher or more severe criticism than most rookie quarterbacks get. For me this season, I don't know. I feel like I've kind of not cared about some of the ridiculous takes around the Jets this season. Not that everything has to be positive, but I'm more talking about things that are really preposterous and just off base. I haven't really been bothered by it as much this season, just because I don't know. I mean, not that I've been a Jets fan as long as a lot of people listening probably have been Jets fans. I'm 21. A lot of people have probably been Jets fans for 30, 40, 50 years. Not that I've been watching that long, but it's been a decade plus for me now, or about a decade, and all this stuff just feels so familiar. Like, it just happens over and over. So I'm just not as mad anymore when I see someone puts out a tweet with a ridiculous take about the team, who's to blame, who's not to blame. Wilson should have done this, or he shouldn't have done that. It's just, I've seen this so many times in my life, and it just I don't really have I don't react to it as angrily as I may have used to. I don't be like, oh, I got to quote tweet this guy and just prove him wrong, and with a film clip or a stat or something. It's just, I don't really care. There's always going to be someone who has something stupid to say, so you can't really change it. Everyone has their opinion, and it is what it is. So I've sort of been a little apathetic about some of the media circus this year. I just kind of sit back and watch, and I feel how I feel about things, and I don't, like I said, there's always going to be that when you're a team in the New York market, and really with any team now, there's such a big, collection of voices and people talking about the team on social media. There's always going to be people who don't really know what they're talking about and have ridiculous things to say. So that's sort of what I've noticed just with this season in particular. Like all the stuff is so familiar. It's the same, nonsense every single year. So it doesn't really bother me because it's a perpetuous thing. It's always going to be there. So I don't really see why I should care so much about the circus around the Jets.
5 minutes into week one, I got a tweet that was basically saying to fire Salah, he's not it. It's just like Twitter's not real, and you're never gonna have people everybody's not going to agree on the same thing. So you're going to have a lot of uneducated opinions and educated opinions that are wrong. Like we've been wrong plenty of times.
Yeah.
We're not meant to know everybody's opinion.
And that's another thing too. Like I've been wrong so much. You've been wrong a lot. Everyone is wrong a lot. But no, yeah, you're never wrong. I don't know why I said that. But people are wrong all the time. And it seems like whenever someone's wrong, there's always this feeling that you got to call them out and pull back their old predictions and everything. It's like, as long as your takes have basis and your predictions are like informed and you're not just saying it to get a reaction, then, it's okay to be wrong. But there's sort of like
and situations change.
Yeah. And things change that you don't expect. There's injuries. There's COVID. There's so much crazy stuff that happens that no one can predict. So sports are entertainment ultimately. So I actually have kind of started to just laugh at a lot of the ridiculous takes. It can be comedy. I think that's the biggest thing to do. You should treat it as like, this is really funny. Some of these things that people say, instead of like, that makes me so mad. You're ruining the narrative around the Jets. Like, whatever.
Right. And I'm going to totally butcher the quote. I'll just paraphrase what Damon Harrison said. And Rich Cimini put out this thing, or ESPN New York put out this thing basically on the failures of New York football over the last decade. And Damon Harrison basically said something along the lines of, when you're playing for the Jets, you don't really get a fresh start. You're playing for their entire history. And I see this all the time on Twitter where it's like Robert Saleh will be talking about his plan, and then somebody will be like, yeah, the same plan we've had for 50 years. It's like, no, it's completely different. Like, you can't judge this team based off the failures of Adam Gase. Obviously, Joe Douglas can take some blame or whatnot, but you can't be impatient with this team because a decade of incompetence. Obviously, the ownership deserves a lot of criticism, but the answer is not to just switch it up every 2 years. You have to get a plan you believe in and stick to it. Give them 3 to 5 years and see how it works out. And that's what the Johnsons are doing. I'll give them credit. I like the people they've put in charge, but you have to be patient because there aren't many teams that just turn it around immediately. I think there's definitely the patient runs thinner next year. I'm not saying that every year we have to be picking top 3 and, talking about young players playing well and building morale. It's like, no, next year they have to win games. I'm not saying they have to be the best team in the league, but they have to win games. They have to be competing for a playoff spot. I mean, they cannot be doing this again. But like you said, things happen, but injuries and whatnot. But the big thing is, do you believe in the process and the plan that you have in place, and then keep moving forward? So yeah, the media circus is just always going to be there with the Jets and everybody else. You just have to ignore it. Don't go on Twitter. All right, from at Knicks boys, do you see Ashton Davis or Elijah Riley starting next season? Do they let May go? What's the plan at linebacker? I damn near hope Ashton Davis doesn't start at safety next year. They can put him at third safety, play him on special teams, use his athleticism. If he has to come in, I mean, hell, I know he got the interception, but maybe he gets better with more and more reps, but you can't just rely on him. Elijah Riley, same thing. I don't necessarily want him to be starting, but definitely want him brought back. I think he's good depth. We'll see what they do at safety. A lot of it's going to depend where they're picking in the draft because maybe they consider Hamilton. But I think they are going to – I think May's gone, but I think they will make some sort of splash at safety, whether it is a high draft pick or signing a guy like Marcus Williams or doing something in free agency to invest in that safety spot because it's just so crucial to this defense to have great safeties. I also think they'll probably bring LaMarcus Joyner back. At least for training camp, I think that they liked that signing, and him going down was kind of a bummer. Michael, what do you think about the safety spot? And then he also asks, what's the plan at linebacker? I think we're going to get to linebacker actually in the next question. So ignore the linebacker part. Let's just talk about the safeties for now.
Yeah, I think it would definitely be a sort of like with how they allowed the tight end position to basically not be upgraded and come into the season with a very similar, basically the same group other than Tyler Croft. So similar how they allowed that group to not be upgraded. I think it would be the same thing if either Davis or Riley were starting next year. And I like Riley. He's definitely proven he should stick around, that he's good depth. And even Davis, I think, has skills that can make him a good backup, but definitely neither is starting material. And I think safety is probably the primary weakness on defense in terms of we have to upgrade that position because obviously they have other weaknesses, but they do have some pieces at various other positions. Whereas here they have pretty much nothing other than just the idea of Davis's potential based on being a third round pick. So I think, like you said, there will be a splash here, whether it's Marcus Williams, Jesse Bates, Quandre Diggs. The safety market in free agency is pretty good. I think we're going to see a big move here and then potentially a high draft pick as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as we said, I think I struggle to see Douglas using a pick on a safety after the whole Jamal Adams thing. But honestly, in retrospect, Adams was a good pick.
Well, I think to your last point, like about the new regime and not letting the history of the team affect it, I think it's kind of the same thing there. I think you can't really use the Jamal Adams or the failure of how that played
I was about to say Jamal worked out
a reason not to do it, but it did work out because he didn't last, but he did get turned into another player. So basically, his impact is still living on through Farrah Tucker. So it was still successful.
Yeah, that was what I was gonna say. Is basically he was a Pro Bowl pick, and he turned into 2 first-round draft picks. So honestly, I mean, Jamal Adams is definitely my least favorite player in the league, but I think he deserves a thank you because he really did end up. We'll see how it works out, but he has a chance to have actually changed the culture just by Joe Douglas fleecing Seattle. So uh, I think there is just a hesitancy there to use a top 5 pick on a non-premium position, but you can make the argument for this defense it is. And when you see what Micah Parsons has done for Dallas, you wouldn't say linebacker is a or outside linebacker is a premium position because obviously he does rush the passer a little bit, but he's more of an off coverage, off the ball linebacker. But would anybody argue that he hasn't had a premium impact on the defense? And I think Kyle Hamilton's a similar unicorn type of player. You can play him all over the place. But hey, we have a lot of podcasts to do before the draft, and so we'll get a little deeper into those prospects. But as it comes to linebacker for Matt Verge 001, has Quincy Williams shown enough to secure a starting position next year, or can he show enough over the next 3 games? Or do you still consider linebacker to be a pretty major need? Michael, I've started off with a bunch of these. I'll give you this one first.
I personally don't think Quincy Williams has shown he can be a starter next year. I think that he has made some progress as the year has gone on, specifically in coverage, but there's still a lot of missed tackles, a lot of bad angles. I think there are a lot of people to blame for the run defense struggles, but if you had to put one guy at the top, it would probably be him. And that's not to single him out. There are so many people, but I do think he's being slightly overrated because of how good his peaks are. Kind of makes people forget and not notice how many mistakes he's making. And again, I think he has gotten a little bit better, but they are still there. So he absolutely has been a surprise. I think he could have value as a sub package guy, specifically when you need athleticism, a guy to cover tight ends, things like that. So I think he has a role for sure, but I don't think he should be penciled in as a starter. And I think they should keep themselves open to looking for another linebacker. It's not a great linebacker market in free agency, and a value for linebacker might not be there for them at the top of the first round. But so maybe he does, because of those things, end up getting the spot anyway next year. But I think they should remain open. I think he's the perfect type of player that they want in this game. He's just not there yet in terms of having the complete package to where he's not making so many mistakes. He actually had this quote recently that kind of exactly summed up his game. And it kind of surprised me that he would actually say this and play this mentality. But to paraphrase, basically he said that he wants to he basically said he wants to play with an all or nothing mentality. Like he wants to make a highlight tackle or absolutely nothing at all, which is not really the mentality you want in a linebacker because those plays are bad where you're missing tackles. So I think he is the type of guy they want in the scheme. It's just he's still missing too many tackles and over pursuing sometimes. So I think they should still stay open to looking for a new starting linebacker next to Mosley.
Well, if you listen to the CBS broadcast, I think it was 2 games ago where Saleh said to the commentators basically that he's looking to see Quincy prove that he deserves a starting spot next year. I think Saleh loves Quincy Williams. I think he's going to give him every single chance to win it. It seems like with every coaching staff they have their guys, those guys that they endear themselves to the coaching staff. Ronald Blair is one of those guys. That's the reason he's in New York. I think Quincy Williams is turning into one of those guys for Saleh. So I think he's going to be given a chance. He might be able to compete. I don't think that they definitely need to make a move here because Mosley's been good, but not great. And Williams, like you said, has been hit or miss. It's potential both of them second year in the system will get better, but this is a 4-3, so you can have technically Williams can be a starter in the 4-3 base personnel base prep package, but you're probably playing nickel most of the time. So one of those guys has got to go off the field, and I think that guy. I think the Jets make a move to try to get a more every down linebacker, and then one of these guys is going to have to rotate out of there. I think Quincy will still have a role next year, even if he's not a full-time starter. I think he's made strides in pass coverage that should be noted. And hell, maybe CJ Mosley becomes the guy that isn't in there on third downs. And maybe they sub Quincy as the pass coverage. Who knows? Because his pass coverage has gotten better. I don't see that. I think Mosley plays all 3 downs. I think they bring in somebody who can also play all 3 downs. And then Williams subs in when necessary. Because this defense, you need a great defensive line and you need hyper reactive, linebackers, and you just need fundamental and sound tackling. As I said on Monday, you watch the 49ers play, not as good, but even you watch them under Saleh, it's that 4-man pass rush was getting after it within 2 seconds every single play. And there was some space in the zone, but that space just collapsed within a millisecond. That ball is there, and the 5 defenders are right there to make the tackle. It was a swarming defense, and that's where you get the all gas, no break. The Jets version of the all gas, no break is not being able to get pressure, these wide open zones. A guy makes a catch, and then, Quincy Williams and other guys just missing tackles, and that's where you see these big gains. But they have some work to do. I think Quincy Williams has shown that he's at least a player and a guy you want to develop. But, again, you can't count on him.
I actually found the quote that he said. I think it was from the latest One Jets Drive episode. So he said, in my head, it's either going to be ESPN top 10 or it's going to be ESPN not top 10. So, I mean, at least he's honest about his game. I don't think that's a good mentality to have. Maybe that's a good quote, but that's exactly how he plays. He's making huge plays and he's also whiffing a ton. But I think to the point you were just talking about, I think this defense does play with all gas, no breaks mentality. I think their biggest problem is that they're too invested into that. They haven't been able to harness and control that yet, because most of the missed tackles and the mistakes this defense makes is not because they're too apprehensive or tentative. It's because they're over pursuing plays. That's really what the majority of the issues have been. So I think their mentality's in the right place. And I think this is promising going forward because it displays that they are buying into what's being preached and that the potential for big playmaking is there. It's just there's a lot of young, fast players out there who don't have that control yet to where they could go all out and be reactive, but not too much to the point where they're getting, overrunning plays. So I think that is a promising thing to where, that is something that can be fixed going forward.
And then he later adds, what's up with Udoga instead of McDermott? I mean, McDermott was god-awful this game. Michael, you can speak to this a little bit more. I would definitely like to see Udoga, who I thought in limited action looked all right and certainly better than McDermott on Sunday.
Yeah, he was bad. Anyone who watched JT O'Sullivan's film review on the Jets offense, which is a great video, it basically 45 minutes of ripping Connor McDermott. He was really bad, and they missed George Fant. This is the number one game where you could see how impactful George Fant has been this year, because there's not, other than early in the Panthers game when he was at right tackle, there hasn't been a game where we've talked about the Jets left tackle this year pretty much at all. But then this game happens and it's one of the main talking points. So you don't realize how good your how good your good linemen are until they're not there.
All right. And then and I agree with everything you said there. I just think one of the things on offensive line as well is it's not just the starting five. I think the depth, and this is one of those things that gets better. I think that the depth has to improve because it's like they've survived the majority of the season with a starting offensive line. And then Sunday you saw an offensive line that just didn't deserve to be out there on the field, especially when Vera Tucker was out there. I think at one point it was like McDermott, Feeney, McGovern, obviously LDT, and then I think was Moses out for a little bit, or no, I think Moses was still in there. But it's just like one more guy goes down, and it's just that offensive line looks like the freshman team for what should be a varsity offensive line. But I think next year you're going to see some reinforcements there. For Matt Rise Up Economics, how's Fatukasi played this year? We can't seem to stop the run. Is that his fault? Is he playing poorly, or are they not playing him enough? Do you expect him to be back next year? Fatukasi is really interesting to me. It's going to come down to the money and where the Jets pick. If the Jets have a top 2 pick and they're in a position to take a Hutchinson or a Kayvon, I think it's less likely Fatukasi comes back, because then I think you're saying, we're going to play, let's say it's Kayvon. You're going to play Kayvon at defensive end. You're going to bump JFM back to 3 tech. And then, Quinnen might have to take some more of Fatukasi's role. But we already kind of thought that Fatukasi wasn't a natural scheme fit for Saleh. He likes, Fatukasi's a 3-4 nose tackle, and this is a 4-3 attacking defense. Foley's obviously had some great games. He's been a very consistent defensive lineman for the Jets. He's not an amazing player, but he is very, very good at what he does. Would he be better in a 3-4 gap defense? Put him back with Todd Bowles and play him in Tampa Bay? Probably. But if the Jets are, let's say they're picking 5 and they don't go edge early, you could bring him back, keep JFM outside. I'm conflicted, but I don't think they pay him a lot of money. I think they will try to bring him back, partly because you don't want to let good players go, good homegrown players go. And he's a locker room leader. He's a team captain. Michael, what do you think about, we've talked about him a few times. What do you think about Fatukasi and his future?
Yeah, I think earlier in the season, we were both, or at least I was, sort of higher on the way he was playing in the scheme. But as the season has gone on, I think it's kind of become clear that he isn't being maximized in a scheme like this, because I think what he's done better than expected is rush the passer in the scheme. He's been okay, but his run defense is not being maximized in a scheme where he's just shooting gaps rather than, lining up at the nose, holding down the center and the guard at the same time, eating up 2 blocks and making it easy for someone else to make a play. He hasn't really gotten the chance to do that, because all he's doing is he's basically just playing Quinnen Williams' role, or Sheldon Rankins, just rotating with those guys, playing 3 tech, just shooting gaps, taking on one guy, instead of doing what he does best, using his size and his strength, anchoring down, and eating up space. So I think it's kind of proven as the season has gone on that he's not a scheme fit. And to me, I know it was definitely harder for me to make this decision earlier, but now I think I definitely feel more comfortable saying I would prefer not to re-sign him. If he does get paid as much as I think he deserves to, based on how good he was the first 2 years, or the previous 2 years. So yeah, I don't think he's been maximized in this scheme.
Do you think a lot of the issues for stopping the run should be blamed? I mean, the argument to bring him back is that he is going to be great against the run, and then the other 3, obviously Fatukasi can get after the pass, so you're probably going to take him out on 3rd downs. But if it is a passing situation on 1st down, he can push the pocket, he can take up blocks, but he's mainly out there to stop the run. And obviously the Jets have been horrendous, even worse without him out there. But how much blame does the Jets' run deficiencies go on Foley, and versus how much blame does go to the scheme and the other members of the front 7?
I would say a little. I feel like I've seen him get moved a little bit more this year than the past couple of years, but I still think he's been, like, his run stopping numbers are still pretty decently up the list, not as high as they were the past 2 years, but they're still up there. And the same thing for Quinnen, not quite as good, but still very good. So I don't think those 2 guys are as much to blame, but they definitely haven't been as impactful against the run as they showed they could be in more of a 3-4 base scheme like they were running the previous 2 years with Greg Williams. So a little bit, they haven't played up to their potential, but in the run game. But it's mainly on, I think, linebackers, safeties, corners are a big part of it. So pretty
Right.
much everyone.
And last thing to remember on Fatukasi, and look, I mean, he was the last pick of the draft, but the Jets did pick Jonathan Marshall, and you can make an argument that a run-stuffing defensive tackle is not a guy that you want to pay a lot of money to. So if Fatukasi gets a bigger offer elsewhere, I think the Jets are fine rolling with, either they pick somebody else on day 3 of the draft this year or wherever. Fatukasi, I think, was like a 6th-round pick or a 5th-round pick. But they have Jonathan Marshall. I think they were already kind of planning to move on from Fatukasi. We'll see. If I had to make, gun to my head, I had to make a call, I would say I don't think he's back next year. But we'll see. I that's like a 60-40 call. But a part of that is because I do think there's a chance that the Jets, even if they don't get top 2 pick, I think there's a chance to take Karlaftis if they're picking 4 or 5, because I think he's a very promising edge prospect as well, and you can still bump JFM inside and move on from Fatukasi. But then again, the Jets love depth at defensive line, so who knows? At Jetty_Hendricks, if the Jets were to decide to look for that true X receiver in the offseason, what is the more viable method to do it, free agency or the draft? I mean, I think they're going to try both. I think they'll try to throw the bag at Devontae Adams. I mean, the Jets are going to have quite a bit of cap space. They can get even more after cutting Shaq Lawson. They'll probably cut. I'm trying to remember who else they can free up. Ryan Griffin. They can also cut Justin Hard. I mean, they can get to the point where they're at around 60-ish million. I think they keep George Fant. And we'll see what they do with McGovern. But I think they'll have about 60 million in cap after clearing some space, so they can really throw the bag at Devontae Adams. Is it in Joe Douglas's nature to have 2 receivers being paid high salaries? Not so sure. I think the draft makes more sense for that perspective. But if there is a big receiver that hits the open market, especially a guy like Adams who has experience in the scheme, or a guy who shakes free in the trade market, I expect Douglas to pounce. And if that doesn't materialize and he likes one of these receivers in the draft, whether it's with a Seahawks pick or with their 2nd-round pick, I think they'll do it there. More likely between the 2, I'll say the draft. Mike, what about you?
Yeah, I think in terms of if you're looking for a big time sort of player, probably the draft is more likely, just because there's only the 2, I think, guys in free agency who you would consider that type of player, and Adams and Godwin. And you never know if these guys even hit the market. And if they do, well, Joe Douglas, is that his kind of move to make? I'm not sure. Like I said earlier, I think he'll be open to it and he has the opportunity to do it because they've sort of plugged the holes in the trenches. So it could happen. I think they will look at it if they have the opportunity and be in that mix, but it's still only 2 guys on the open market who I think check that box. But I think it would probably be more likely they take receiver high in the draft if they're looking for just another weapon to add to that group, and maybe that someone knows more of the potential to be that go-to X receiver sort of guy, as the question sort of asks. So yeah, I think they'll consider both, but ultimately I think you feel confident going into next year with Elijah Moore, Corey Davis. I think that's a good duo. I feel like Corey Davis is going to be all right. I feel like he was the player who you hoped you were getting in terms of the opportunities he created, the separation he was creating, the targets he got, and sort of the spots in the field where he's getting the ball. It was just the drops this year. He was just not catching the ball like we were used to, but that is the sort of problem that, you would hope should have a decent chance of normalizing. And he just goes back to his usual rate of catching the ball. It's not like he wasn't a scheme fit or he wasn't giving effort or there were physical drop off, anything physical. He just wasn't catching the ball.
Right.
So I feel like that's the sort of thing that should fix. And, Corey Davis is who he was in 2020. Elijah Moore continues to build on what he showed this year. That's a really good duo to start with. So it's not the hugest need on the team. But like you said earlier in this podcast, it's not how you build a team. You don't say, all right, that's good. This is good. Let's plug all the holes we have, and then we'll have a perfect roster. You got to take the best players you can, unless there's a position where you're just dead set. You have Aaron Donald, you have Myles Garrett. That position is just, you have a superstar there. Anything short of that, you have to be open to improving it, because injuries happen, declines happen, young players not building on their potential, like Denzel Mims. that happens. Guys declining like Corey Davis did this year, that happens. So they should absolutely still be open to improving it. But
Right.
I do think that it's not something that there's as much pressure to improve it as some other positions.
From @_Doe_Bowl_, who makes, I gotta say, I think I've done all right so far with the ats. We'll see if I butcher any more. There's a few more questions left.
Well, I think his handle is an explanation of how to pronounce his last name.
Doe, you're right. His name is Douglas Doble,
Yeah,
and
so
then
you
it's
got it.
Doble. Wow. But okay, it's spelled dough like, pizza dough, and then bowl like the end of, okay,
Yeah.
whatever. All right. Who makes the most sense that the Jets have a pick in the 3 to 6 range? My 2 cents, not Stingley due to injuries and the fact that I don't think they value cornerback highly enough to take one there. Great minds, Douglas. I think this is a great question because as I don't want to say as much as I want the Jets to lose. I think the most likely scenario is they beat Jacksonville on Sunday. It's fun to speculate and think about getting Cave on, but I think they'll beat Jacksonville. I hope if that's the case that Zach Wilson plays well. And if that's the case, they're going to be picking that 3 to 6 range. And as I said, we have a lot more podcasts, and honestly, I'm not as well versed in the draft as maybe I was last year at this time because we'll still be cheering for wins, but we have all of January and February and March to really get versed and do a deep dive and figure out who we necessarily want. But I've done a little bit, and I think you probably have as well, Michael. Obviously the guys that come up in that range, we've talked about Stingley, the corner from LSU. There's Hamilton, the safety from Notre Dame, Evan Neal, the tackle from Alabama, George Karlaftis, another edge from Purdue. There's a few other guys in there. I think those are the big ones that come up. There's also maybe they trade down. That's another option. But if they are going to make that pick, who do you think was the most likely? And it's hard to say in December, but you can use the holes in the team and the positional value. Who do you think they would take if they're in that position and all four of those guys are available?
Yeah, I agree with Douglas here, who says that Stingley isn't the best option. Injuries, I think, for this team, with everything they've dealt with this year, has everyone prioritizes it, every single team, but this team's got to prioritize it even more just because it's been such a big problem. I don't think they're in a great position to take on injury risk type players because even the guys who they get who aren't injury risks are turning into injury prone players. So I think that's not something they're in a great position to take on. So I agree that Stingley isn't the best option for that reason. But I agree with the guy you continue to bring up. I think Kyle Hamilton is a good option up here. I know a lot of fans aren't too high in the idea because they want offense. They have Jamal Adams fatigue. They don't think safety is that important, but I feel like we've seen all year how important safety is. I think if the Jets had Marcus May and LaMarcus Joyner all year, even with May not having the best season this year, like just competent safety play, I think this could have been not the worst defense in the NFL, maybe a mid-20s defense, because it's really important. Safety is a lot like offensive line to me. There isn't, if you have a great safety, they can make a lot of plays, but it's more so about the plays they don't make. I think when you don't have your regular safeties, when you have bad safeties, you notice them a lot, missing tackles, blowing coverages, giving up big plays, but a good solid safety just doesn't show up on the screen. You forget he's even there because he's executing his role, not making mistakes. And I think safety is really important for that reason. And you don't realize it until you don't have one. But in the case of Hamilton, like you said, I think he is the type of guy who can be that type of player who checks those boxes in terms of filling his role, but also can be a big time playmaker who does have game changing type impact which is what the Jets need in the secondary. So I like Kyle Hamilton as an option up there.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a guy that I've started to fall in love with a little bit. It's hard because you want to draft premium positions. So I keep going back. Well, he's a safety, and not just he's a strong safety, but he is just that unicorn. And hell, a lot of people have him as just the best player in the draft. Ignoring Thibodeau, ignoring Aiden Hutchinson. A lot of people say Kyle Hamilton's the best player in this draft. He's a high character guy. He's going to be 21 his entire rookie season. He's 6'4". He has crazy speed. He's, has sideline to sideline speed and coverage ability. He can play in the box. He can play linebacker. He does it all. And he is a perfect scheme fit. I think he's a perfect culture fit. I think he's a better prospect than Jamal Adams easily. I shouldn't say easily. I think he is I think he's a better prospect than Jamal Adams. I think most people would agree with that. Adams was an amazing prospect as well. And I think if you put him into this defense, I think you're going to see it take off a little. I think he's exactly the type of player the Jets are missing on the back end, just a lightning rod for them. And I do think he would have a Micah Parsons type of impact on this team. I really do. So I would not hate it. I think, yes, it would get some blowback, but as soon as give it a few weeks in the season when people see what Kyle Hamilton could add to this defense, to this all gas, no breaks defense, and I think people will change their mind. So I'm aboard the Kyle Hamilton train if they're not picking top two. I'm also aboard the trade back train. Go ahead and fill needs. But I think you look at all those guys, I think Hamilton is the best. I don't love Stingley with the injury issues. I know Hamilton got injured this year as well, but Stingley's had some injury problems. The other guy that I could see, let's say they're picking third, they don't want to go safety. We've talked about how they want to build in the trenches. They could go Evan Neal, the offensive lineman from Alabama. He has experience on the left and right side. You could play him at right tackle. And as we said, you don't draft to just fill needs. You draft to get the best players available. There's a chance that Evan Neal is the top player on their board at offensive line, which is where they want to build. And I guess the issue there is what do you do with George Fant? I guess you cut him. You'd free $10 million up. You could do whatever, or you just keep him as Becton insurance. But you can't draft to fill needs. So I guess he's certainly an option there, and he's also a blue chip prospect, and he would really take your offensive line to the next level. But I think Hamilton is a blue chip prospect at a huge position of need. I think he's a perfect scheme fit. I mean, I'm definitely falling in love with the Hamilton train. I could also see, and one more, I could definitely see Karlaftis as well. I think he is getting overshadowed by a great edge class between Kayvon and Aiden Hutchinson. And he's just kind of getting pushed aside. Like he's number 3, but in any other class, I think he would be number 1. I think he is a damn good edge prospect, and I could definitely see the Jets considering him with their first round pick. And if he's there with their second, I could definitely see it as well. I think he's a guy that would be a perfect scheme fit as well. Now, this was an interesting question that we got actually while we were recording, and I think it's a good time to plug it in relating to what we were talking about. So this is from Ben Keeley 16. He said, "Hey guys, love the pod. Thank you. Thoughts on if we win this week, keeping us locked into the 4 spot." So he proposes, this is something we haven't talked about, if they trade to number 2 to get one of the top 2 edge rushers and then move back from the Seattle pick to attack, receiver or possibly Linderbaum. I mean, the thing with this scenario is you have to have teams that are willing to do it. You either have to have a team picking it at 2 or 1 that is fine with passing one of these edge prospects and isn't going to, raid you in a deal, because I don't think the Jets want to sacrifice that much for moving up. But if they, you could throw in a second round pick or a third, whatever it is. And you have to have a team that wants to trade up to get into the Seattle pick, maybe to take a quarterback. I think that's the other thing is because quarterback is not so big this year. Somebody's going to fly up the rankings this year. It seems like Pickett's going to be that guy. So maybe he'll end up going top 5, but it kind of seems like that first quarterback may be taken in the range of the Jets Seattle pick. And I think that is a good opportunity for them to trade back and accumulate more assets, maybe pick up another first, next year, just keep stockpiling 2 first-round draft picks every year. But what do you think about that, Michael? I think that the trade down with the second pick makes a lot of sense, or with the first pick, one of them. But I didn't think about the Jets have the assets to maybe trade up, get an edge rusher, and then trade back with the second and kind of break even on the assets that they lost. What do you think about that?
I like it. And I mean, like you said, it takes 2 to tango. We need someone else to be open to do it. But I think it is a type of move that, makes sense for them because obviously they got the quarterback already. So we're not doing a quarterback trade up. But I think this is the next for this particular team and the needs that they have right now and the schemes that they run. A big time edge rusher is the next best thing. And obviously they have one in Carl Lawson, but you don't know about his health. And you don't have a ton beyond that. Bryce Huff is a great piece, but this a prospect like those 2 guys, whether it's Kayvon or Aiden Hutchinson, is the type of prospect that could really be a franchise-changing piece, sort of like Nick Bosa was in San Francisco. So if you can leap a spot or 2 to get one of those guys, whatever that price might be, toss out a second-round pick, third-round pick, or maybe a couple of those types of picks, whatever it might be, if they like one of those guys that much, it's something worth doing. And I think it's a luxury that having that extra first round pick sort of gives you. You could feel more comfortable making an aggressive trade like that because you have that surplus pick in the first round. So it's something that I would definitely keep on the table because as good as whatever prospect they end up getting is, even if they don't get one of those two guys, I just think there's so much more value in what an edge rusher can do for
Right.
this team than when any of those other players are going to get.
I think there's such a drop off after the first two picks this year that the more I think about it, the chances that the Jets take both their first round picks at their slots as they are right now are very slim. Maybe not very slim. Are in my opinion, I think it's more likely that Joe Douglas is going to trade one of those picks because, like you said, when you have two first round picks, the beauty of the Jamal Adams deal is it gives them. There's only a few teams that have this ability. It gives you the opportunity to just keep wheeling and dealing. I mean, if there's a player you really love, you could trade up for him, like in this situation, or if you're sitting there and it's like, hey, we have all these players that are similarly valued, we can move down. Maybe a team wants to go up and get a quarterback. We can add a first next year, be in the same situation next year, get creative next year, and then you can still go ahead and take, Linderbaum or an interior offensive lineman at 15 or 16, wherever you're picking. I think that's I think that is the smart strategies. Once you get two first round picks, you want to hold on to that as long as you can. And you can keep kicking the can down the road and still take two guys in the first round every year. Granted, they love two prospects. If a guy falls to that second Seattle pick, go ahead and take him. But it is something to consider because there aren't many chances. Not many NFL teams get it. I mean, that's different this year. There's been quite a few. But, last time the Jets had two first round picks before this past season was like 2013. And before that, I don't remember. I mean, a few years before that. So it only happens every few years. And if you can keep prolonging that, that's a benefit. It also kind of reminds me of this type of deal. It's not exactly, but you saw what the Dolphins did for the 2021 draft, where they were wheeling, dealing, trading down to 12 with San Francisco, and then using some of the assets to trade up to 6. And they added a first round pick for this year's draft. When you got multiple first round picks, you have flexibility. And if you have a good GM, he's going to take advantage of that. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Joe Douglas wheeling and dealing before the draft and maybe on draft night itself. All right, two more here. For Matt, the Mets fan, would you be opposed to our top three picks being Evan Neal, Tyler Linderbaum, and Trey McBride? I can't act like I know too much about McBride. I know he's a tight end. But just based off positional value, you're going doubling down on offensive line and you're going tight end. I think tight end's a big need for them. I think they got to address it in the draft. So I don't hate Trey McBride, even though I haven't watched him too much. Can't say I'm in love with going back-to-back offensive line. I mean, look, the thing we've said, Michael, is it's hard to be a bad team when you have a great offensive line. And if you have Evan Neal and Tyler Linderbaum to this offensive line, you're going to have a great offensive line. So you can't complain. I just feel like, if they're getting Linderbaum and they're trading down, it's more digestible. But if they're taking Evan Neal at 4 and Linderbaum at 8, I can't say that I love it. I think you want to spread the wealth around a little bit. And then you have to think about all these first round contracts that you're going to have coming up. I mean, obviously it'll be spread out over the next 5 years or so, but it's like, then you're going to pay Becton, you're going to pay AVT, you're going to pay Evan Neal, you're going to pay Tyler Linderbaum. You kind of want to spread where your contracts and your rookie contracts go. And if you put all the rookie contracts on the offensive line at the same time, down the road, somebody might not get paid. It's just the way it works. So I wouldn't love this. If they trade down, it would be more digestible. Michael, what are your thoughts on that type of draft class?
I agree. I don't necessarily love this. I think they're like last year or the year before that. I think they're, and again, not too, like we've already said, you don't want to be too much of a position you don't want to draft based on position too much. Just get talent. This team needs it everywhere. But I do think this is a little bit too lenient towards offense and towards offensive line when I think they really need to stock up on defensive talent because for this specific scheme, it's just a very talent-based scheme. You need great players to make it work. Andrew Golden did a really good article on this at Jets X Factor, looking at some of the similar schemes, the recent history from that Pete Carroll sort of scheme, whether it's Salah's Niners, the Jaguars, Gus Bradley, and the Seahawks themselves. And you need talent to make it work. And even at that point, it doesn't have that long of a shelf life. It only has as long of a shelf life as you have talent. So you really need great players. And that's what the scheme does, is it allows great players to shine. It's not going to do a ton of just scheming up production like Rex Ryan did, like Greg Williams did, and Todd Bowles does a lot of. It's not like that at all. We're going to allow our great players to get after the quarterback. We're going to allow our athletic guys in the back end to run around. And the Jets don't have guys who are good enough to make that type of defense work. So they really need elite talent on defense. And I think this draft is an opportunity to do that. Not that they should ignore offense, but I think in this particular scenario, going as offense heavy as that, taking two offensive linemen and then a tight end, as important as tight end is, I think that's a little bit too heavy on one side of the ball, considering how big the defensive needs are.
All right, last question, and Michael, I'll turn this one to you first. From at NY Jets fan for life 1, what are the players besides Zach Wilson you want to see step up and play better / have bigger roles heading to these final 3 weeks? Also, have you guys done your push-up contest yet? I don't remember having a push-up contest with you. I think I'd probably win that. We may have. I mean, that was a bit of an asshole thing to say. We can have a push-up contest.
No, it's probably true.
We can do it. I think we had the JetX Combine. And when Michael came to Syracuse, I think we did run some 40-yard dashes. I don't think we had a push-up contest, though. I mean, it's possible that I said something dumb months ago about a push-up contest. I would be down to do it, Michael, if you want to do a push-up contest. But I don't remember that being the case. I just want to do the Jets X Factor Combine before this year's Combine to really prove who is the best athlete out of all the Jets X Factor guys. But besides that,
yeah, I don't totally remember the push-up contest thing. If we did do it between you and I think I'd probably have to be maybe like a plus 10.5. Then that'd make it fair.
You said you could plank for 2 minutes. I mean, you got the core strength.
Yeah,
so.
I mean that's probably my best physical attribute. I don't have great overall strength, but I feel like I have decent core strength. That's kind of what I've done the most work on throughout my life, which is not a ton, but more so than other things. So I think
you got the Robbie Anderson
probably
thing. You got the Robbie Anderson thing going.
Yeah, I actually do very much have that kind of physique. So I could probably
do speed.
In this.
Don't forget the speed, Michael. You're as fast as Robbie. I saw that 40 time.
So I could probably do decently in this if I got like a plus, maybe +5. I think maybe I could do good.
Okay.
But what was the other part of this question? Oh yeah. What players do we want to see step up, play better, and in bigger roles over the final few weeks? I think offensively, I would like to see. I just want to see Michael Carter continue to evolve, because I think in this game coming back against Miami, he did have some struggles in pass pro, gave up a couple sacks, but that's something he was doing well for most of the season prior to that. So I would like to see him round out his game, show some progress in that area, and then just continue putting up big numbers, showing he could be the engine of this offense. Because in this game, he didn't put up big numbers, only had 20 total yards, but he continued to make guys miss, and have those -2 yard into 2 yard type plays. But to see him put up huge numbers would be promising. And then defensively, whatever hope you can get out of Ashton Davis, these young corners continuing to play well. In addition to Ashton Davis, if you can see Bryce Hall continue to ascend, he's been hot lately. If Brandon Eccles can build on his breakout performance, Michael Carter II's kind of had fallen off a little bit second half. If he can get back on track, really across the roster though, what makes this team unique compared to past bad Jets teams is that the vast majority of these players have an opportunity, if they're not a complete lock to be with the team next year, a chance to do that. There aren't a ton of guys where it's like, that guy's just a random veteran. I don't care what he does. He's going to be gone. They don't really have many players like that. Everyone on this team has a good chance to stick around, to be an important piece. So I think that makes it easier to root for this team, is that most of what they do is something that can be carried over into the future. So it's not hard to look around and find little, bits and pieces of, just identifying players here and there who might be important. Most of these players are important. So I think that is what makes it easier to watch these last few games.
Yeah, Carter is turning into my favorite Jets player. He is just so fun to watch. I can't remember the last running back we had that was this fun to. I mean, obviously, you can go back to Curtis Martin, but maybe if we're being more realistic, I mean, like Sean Green, LT, that duo was fun to watch. I mean, Michael Carter, just the amount of guys he makes miss on every single carry, he always seems to get positive yards. He's just a really fun guy, so I'm excited to see him over the next 3 weeks. When Elijah Moore comes back, obviously him. If you want to get a little deeper, I mean, obviously, I think Brandon Eccles is a big one. If he does enough over these next 3 weeks, corner definitely moves into a position where it's like, yeah, you need to add more bodies, but hey, maybe instead of drafting a guy really high or paying a corner big money in free agency, maybe just take a guy in the second or third who can battle with Eccles. But if he had a great game on Sunday, same goes for Bryce Hall, Michael Carter the second. I'd love to continue to watch them. I want to see Bryce Huff just because I feel that he had a great start to the season. I felt like I think we were kind of hoping maybe for more with Carl Lawson out, but he's just battled through injuries, missed so much of the season. I think he's had good pressure numbers. I would hope to see maybe a couple sacks from Bryce Huff. And then obviously, I mean, there's plenty of guys, but maybe some more Quincy Williams action as well. Maybe try to solidify himself as a guy who should definitely have a bigger role next year. And then lastly, Denzel Mims, if he can do anything. I mean, I really, really, I'd want to see the Denzel Mims breakout. I just don't know if we are. For anything, even if he's not going to stick around, if he gets any sort of highlights on tape, at the very least, it raises his trade value. So I'm hoping Denzel Mims can have some good games down the stretch. All right, Michael. I think that's it. I think that's it for us. That was a bit of a long one. We knocked out a lot of questions there. Pretty thorough mailbag. But hey, we've been inconsistent the last few weeks. We're trying to go back to the 2 podcasts a week format. We appreciate everybody for listening. You can follow us at CYJ Pod on Twitter, Michael at Michael_Nania, myself at Ben W. Blessington. Go to jetsxfactor.com for the best place to go for Jets content. And Michael, as we do every week, any last words?
Well, there's a shout out to at Sam Darnold Show on Twitter. We have a lot of good uniform discussions, and before the season, I put out my predictions for what uniforms the Jets would wear in every game this season, and he updated me with my record so far, and I am now equal to the Jets, 3-11 with my uniform predictions this season. I thought I was going to get a win with the Miami game because they usually wear green on white, but the Dolphins switched it up, went with all aqua, making the Jets wear white on green. So my predictions for the last 3 games before the season were stealth black for the Jaguars, green on green for the Bucks, and white on white for the Bills. So how do you think I'm going to finish?
I'm calculating mine because I found mine 3. I think I might be worse. I'm 3-12 right now, Michael. So your last 3 were what again? Sorry, I was calculating mine, but
we played 14 games. So are you 3-11 or 2-12?
No, I had 3 right. I got the Panthers right with green and white, the Broncos right, and the Falcons right, and everything else has been wrong.
So you got 4?
No, I got 3.
Which ones did you get right?
I just said the Panthers, Broncos, and Falcons.
Okay. The ones that I got were the Patriots, the road game, the Texans road game.
Okay.
Actually, no, Eagles home game, the all black, Patriots road game, white on green, and the Falcons road game.
Okay.
So those are the 3.
This is unbelievably lame, but I will say there are some. This is the things that you have to talk about when you're 3-10 or 3-11, whatever the fuck they are now. All right, three games to go. What were your predictions?
I have stealth black for Jacksonville, all green Tampa Bay, all white for Buffalo.
Okay, so we have the same thing except Tampa Bay. I have green on white. So if I'm right, whoever gets more right here, it's going to come down to the Tampa Bay game. We should put some sort of bet on this, Michael, to make this kind of interesting.
I actually don't want to because I think you're going to get that one.
Think they're going to wear green and white?
They already pulled out the all green for New Orleans. I don't think they're going to do it again.
They've been wearing a lot of late season all greens. I mean, the last few years they've worn all green in December.
That is true. Last year, though, Raiders and Browns last
Yeah.
year, right?
And the year before that, they were the
And
Steelers.
the Bills game last year at home.
Yeah, that's what I'm
So
saying.
I could have a shot.
Yeah, so we should put some sort of wager on that. I don't know. Let us know what should the loser of the two have to do, if there is one. There will be one actually, unless they go like all black or something. What's the loser of the two have to do? Tweet us at CYJ Pod. Okay, we're gonna get out of here. Thank you so much for listening. Everybody, stay safe. We'll see if this game happens on Sunday. If so, we'll have a recap pod coming out on Monday. If the game gets pushed, I know we could have talked a little bit more about our. Do you have a prediction, Michael, for what's going to happen? I guess we should, because this will be our last podcast before the game. Any predictions for what will happen on Sunday, if it is on Sunday?
I do think the Jets will win. I actually do think they're going to have that feel good game they've been looking for. And this keeps up the trend they've had. They've won every 4 weeks this season. They've done it all year. So I think they're going to win. I think Wilson's going to have finally a game with good stats for the first time since the Titans game. And I don't feel like I'm being biased because I don't think they're going to win the next two games after that. I think they'll win.
Yeah, I think the thing I'm looking for is, if you're going to win, please, for the love of God, let them put all 4 quarters together and let Wilson have a great statistical performance and tape performance. But, like, give us all 4 quarters, not some lopsided game. Give us a 3-touchdown, 300-yard performance. I mean, really, if the Jets are going to win, make it worth it. I think the Jets do win. I don't know if it's going to be that great as I'm predicting, but I think Wilson's going to have a good game and the Jets are going to win. All right, let's get out of here. We'll be back on Monday. If the game is later in the week, we'll be back the day after that. But stay tuned. Thank you for listening. Go Jets.